Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gray Matter. Well, we have a really great show for you today. A guest that I've been looking forward to having on the program for some time. I've had the pleasure of appearing on her show on a few occasions. She's American media personality and journalist, Emerald Robinson. Welcome to the show, Emerald. It's great to have you here.
I'm so happy to join you.
Well, before we introduce you more properly, which takes a bit of time because you've done a lot of things and you're very busy, as usual, we're going to go to our framing aphorisms. And the first one is from somebody that you have followed and talk about a lot on your show and in your media. That's President Donald Trump. He said, true leaders take responsibility for the success of the team and understand that they must also take responsibility for the failure. I think that's one of the best things about President Trump. And next, from certainly a greater authority, Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10, which reads, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." And finally, from somebody who is a media personality that I know was very, very important, certainly in the American milieu. That's the late Andrew Breitbart, who said, "Walk toward the fire. Don't worry about what they call you. All those things are said against you because they want to stop you in your tracks. But if you keep going, you're sending a message to people who are rooting for you, who are agreeing with you. The message is that they can do it too." So who do we have in the show today? Well, Emerald Robinson. She is an independent journalist. She has a weekday show called The Absolute Truth. It's on Lindell TV. She served as the chief White House correspondent for Newsmax and for One America News. Before that, she graduated magna cum laude from a university in Virginia. And she was also an actress, which is an interesting background. But maybe what I'd like to start, I'm not surprised that you were at all that you were an actress at Emerald, and I'm not poking fun at you. But where I'd like to start is, looking at your background, your history. You're the daughter of a preacher man, growing up in Virginia. What was it that drew you to communications and media? Obviously, that's where you took your degree. But did you find that you had an interest in things like politics and media early on, or is it something that came later when you were
Apparently
at
when I was
university?
5. That's what they tell me. And I mean, I'm up the holler, right? I'm not in any metropolitan area whatsoever. And we didn't have the internet then, but my aunt tells me that when I was 5, I said that I was going to be a journalist. And I'm like, are you sure I used that word? Like maybe I said on TV or a reporter. She said, no, you said journalist. So I guess it did start really early. I always liked to write. I was a writer, and I would sit and I tried to write a novel when I was like 7. And I would make these talk shows, like, back in the day, who was it that Sally Jesse Raphael? I'd have my
Yeah.
pretend guests, and I would have Paula Abdul like interludes as my intro music. So I just always thought, I guess, I was going to do something like this. I do like to communicate. I don't know. God just made me that way, and I have resigned myself. Now, it wasn't politics that was my initial interest. That was purely God moved me into that. I was intimidated by it even. I didn't think I was smart enough. I didn't think I knew enough about it. But then when I showed up in that White House briefing room and I sat amongst those people, I felt much better about myself. But this is obviously, I didn't choose this path. It feels like God chose it for me. And you know what? I've actually been doing my reading from Isaiah lately. So it was very interesting that you chose a verse out of Isaiah.
Right over my shoulder, do not fear. So that's our mantra. But I'm interested to know about your time as a White House correspondent. That must have been a really fascinating experience, and I'm interested in how that maybe shaped your current career, or did it? What was it like in that space when you were operating there?
It's so funny you bring that up. I didn't want to go to the White House. When I was working for One America News and they talked about moving me over to the White House, I actually did not want the job. I did not want that beat. I said, let me keep doing Congress, or, I would prefer to do some of these other cover these other issues. Also, the White House is not a very glamorous job. It looks way
Mm.
more glamorous on TV than it actually is. You are literally like in a fishbowl
Mhm.
with the smarmiest people for the most part. There's a couple good ones, just a couple that you can imagine, and some of them, like, literally don't bathe, okay? I won't name any
No.
names here, but it is a very small room, and then you're only allowed to be in a very small portion of the White House grounds, so you're all right there on top of each other, and that briefing room could use some updating. I mean, literally wet socks would lay in the floor. Mice would fall out of the ceiling as it did on a Peter Alexander, the NBC guy, and he's
Right,
kind of
yeah.
known to be a bit of a cad. So it was kind of funny. It was very appropriate, actually. But it did shape me. For
Mhm.
one, like I said, I I think American people feel so excluded from politics. They feel that there
Mhm.
are people who know better than them because they went to Harvard or they went to Yale. I didn't. I went to a
Mhm.
state school. I went to a satellite branch of the University of Virginia. Um, they feel like they're not a part of this process because they don't really have the knowledge base. I learned that is absolutely not true. These people were some of the most unimpressive people I've ever met. I would also agree, say the same thing about Congress. I think you
Mhm.
must have like a maximum IQ to be allowed into Congress or something. I don't know how Thomas Massey got in there. Um, because it's just not impressive people. And I thought, oh my goodness, it was like a eye-opening moment
Mhm.
because I
Mhm.
realized the majority of us who are really reasonable people with a lot of common sense at the very least, if our IQ isn't, over 150, we got a lot of common sense.
Mhm.
We have been leaving it to who we thought were the adults in the room, and that's how we
Right.
got in this mess.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I approached my reporting like a regular person, right?
Mhm.
Because I did feel like an outsider.
Right.
And I found out that was a really good thing. And so when I started delivering the news from the White House and from Congress, I did it as someone who was very in tune with the people on the outside who had also thought that. And I told them all the wars that I
Mhm.
saw.
Yeah.
And I approached my reporting like that, a conversation that I would just be having with my friend, telling them what I saw.
Mhm.
Essentially.
Mhm. Yeah,
It
and of
also grew my
course
faith a lot. I realized God had been protecting us because these people sure were not, and it really grew my faith in God and
yeah.
I am the daughter of a preacher man who was
Mhm.
also a coal miner. He would actually not take a salary from the church. They just helped the
Wow.
needy with the tithes and offerings and kept the
Mhm.
doors open, and they pay the bills for, a widow or someone whose husband had run out, make sure the kids are fed. Um, but I found God in a way that I never had, and so even growing up and being what I thought was a strong Christian, it just made me all the stronger. And I love
Mm.
those are such good quotes opening up. What Andrew Breitbart said, I hadn't heard that quote from him, but I'm going to write that down and adopt that because that's how I felt. Like, I would get caught up because
I'll
think,
send it to you. I'm pleased
please
to do it.
do.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I don't have to tell you anything about the book of Isaiah. You're all about that. So obviously, you're not from a privileged background, and maybe that's why one of the strengths of what you do is you connect with people from all walks of life, and you're a truth teller. But this has gotten you into trouble. One of the things that we have in common, Emerald, is not on the same scale, but we've both been the target of cancel culture experience, and you went through a very difficult one in 2021 when you were accused of spreading COVID misinformation, like many of us, and promoting false claims about vaccine ingredients that turned out to be not only true, but the truth was even worse than what you were reporting at the
Mhm.
time. And so you were suspended from Newsmax and permanently suspended from Twitter. What was that like going through that cancel culture experience?
It's weird because you would think it would feel worse than it did. I again, my faith really sustained me.
Yeah.
I felt like I was in a cocoon almost, and I know that had to just supernaturally be God
Hmm.
because I was all over. I was in Deadline. I was in the Hollywood Reporter. Howard Kurtz was doing segments about me on Fox News Sunday. But it just didn't. I was also tired. I mean, I was pretty tired. I might have slept through the first 2 weeks of it because I had just been working so hard, and
Mhm.
while I was having my babies, and we come off in 2020, we come off a just grueling election year. COVID was where it was very taxing to report on all this, especially be the only person saying some of these things and the kind of, you know, tension you would feel around you.
Mhm.
While you don't care what they think about you, you're in this tense. I didn't realize how tense it was and what it
Mhm.
might have been having an effect on me. So it was sort of surreal. And that everybody, and also what I didn't know, because I was so had my head down in my work, what was encouraging is some of the people that I would have never thought of that stood up for me and the calls I got. And it was really shocking, the outrage. The
Mhm.
receptionist, I was told the receptionist at Newsmax just put the phone down and cried because she was
Really?
getting so many calls to the network hammering
Mhm.
them about pulling me off the air and the kind of statements that they had made behind my back to outlets like the Washington Post. There was a massive
Mhm.
amount of outrage and support for me that I would have never suspected. And so
Mhm.
it sort of validated my work to a bit. What I did at the time was hard for me is that people couldn't see the reporting. I would put the source material out there and say, look, I'm not the one saying this. It's
Mhm.
in the documents. And that
Right.
people would try to, it's unfathomable to me. And there's still so many people in denial, right? Of what we're suffering, the turbo cancer pandemic that is only
Mhm.
going to
Mhm.
ramp up, that they
Yeah.
don't wanna admit is from the poison of the jabs. So that part was
Mhm.
a little hard for me because I'm a bit of an overachiever. I was really studious and really cared, and so I thought, "I've put my homework out there. You can
Mhm.
just look at it. Go look for yourself and you'll find it." And so that
Yeah.
part was a little bit hard for me, and some of the people who I'd respected before. So on the flip side, besides the unexpected support, you also got the unexpected criticism and
Right.
ghosting.
Mhm.
Is some of my
Yeah.
friends ghosted me, and I thought, you know what? What a coward. You could say something that I thought was blatantly wrong, and
Mhm.
even if it was wrong, and in my case
Yeah.
it wasn't, but even if it
Yeah.
was wrong, you still be my friend. I might be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, you sure you really wanna go with this?" But
Mhm.
you still be my friend, and especially if you were
Mhm.
going through something hard, I'd be there to, try to cheer you up, walk with you, say, "You know what? It's just a phase. It's a time. It's gonna pass." But
Yeah.
what was amazing about it, so when I came through and the fog cleared and I got my sleep, 'cause I also had I had a baby in 2020, so I was just really
Right.
tired.
You've
So I
got 2
slept.
kids now, right?
Yeah, I have a 5 and a
Yeah.
9-year-old.
Yeah.
I, emerged from it and I thought, "Okay, I'm gonna be a soccer
Mm.
mom. I have my Substack. I'll write at my Substack," 'cause like I said, I do written journalism as well. I'll write at my
Mhm.
Substack and I'll just, stay home. But then the
Yeah.
phone rings. I had a few people call, but the one that really caught my attention was Mike Lindell.
Mr. Lindell. Yeah.
And that was it. I
Mhm.
haven't stopped since, and I had a viewer that sent me a message and she said, "I had a dream about you," and she said, "This is actually going to unleash you." She said,
Mhm.
I saw you in my dream, you were running and you had all these medals, all these awards from, contests you'd won, but they were holding you down and you
Mm.
couldn't run. And they were holding you back and you were about to falter, but then you started throwing those medals off one at a
Mhm.
time. And you started running faster, faster. And that's what it's
Yeah.
felt like.
Yeah. And here you are. The
Yeah.
Substack is doing extremely well. I think it's ranked number 5 in the category of health and politics and growing. Audience is growing there. And the show has done incredibly well. The Absolute Truth on Lindell TV that started in 2022. Um, so are you, maybe this is not the right way to put it, but are you shocked at the way that sort of God has unfolded this? I mean, I don't know if you have this experience, but oftentimes in my life, and it sounds like you might identify with this. You're going along in a certain direction. You think you're going somewhere, and you even think that that's where you're supposed to be going. And then something like what happened to you happens, and you end up in a much better place where you're much more suited and you're happier. but you didn't see that coming. And then when it unfolds, you go, okay, yeah, this is what he had in mind for me all the time. Is that the way it feels right now with your show? And is that do you identify with that, or
Yeah,
what's
that's
the
been the
experience
story of
been
my
like?
life, and so even, one of my friend colleagues last week asked me, "Well, what is your goal? Like, what about this year? Like, what do you want?" And I sat there for a moment and didn't have any per se. And then I said, look, every time that I thought I knew where I was going, God had me going in a different direction. So I can't even really say. I just
Mhm.
trusted him. And, as far as where we're going, I also now run Lindell TV. I run the
Really?
operations, and yeah,
Wow.
I oversee as
Wow.
of last, I think, March. We've had exponential growth. Our
Mhm.
presence in DC, our reporting, our team is just doing an amazing job. And so I didn't see myself doing that. I don't like to lead. Okay. I'm one of those people that like to work very independently. Like if
Mhm.
you were in a school project with me, you had to watch me. I was really bad to just say, I'll do it and I'll tell you what I
Mm,
did.
right. Mhm, mhm.
So this has been it's been a learning experience for me, but it's been really good. So I'm just constantly thrown into situations where I didn't think I'd be well suited. I didn't believe it. And I don't think without God's help, I probably would be right.
Mhm.
But I know that for a fact. But that's sort of where we are now, and the network's doing so well. I mean,
Yes.
we're
Mhm.
driving the news cycle all over the place.
Yeah.
And of
Yeah.
course comes this mirrors, and I had to tell my correspondent this. I had to have this conversation with two of them yesterday, because both of them showed up in hit pieces in major media outlets, and I said, "No, this is good. This is great. This is what you want. A, it's free publicity. It's there. It is true. There's no bad publicity. Your name's on everybody's lips."
Right.
But I said, "But this means you are doing the right thing because look who's saying it."
Yeah.
So it's just been phenomenal.
Mhm. And, one of the things that, I wanted to ask you about too is that, you mentioned your children. You're married to a man who's a poet.
Yes.
So you've got your family and your children, and you're balancing all that. You're obviously somebody who's working a lot. For the women who are listening to this and have similar challenges in terms of balancing their work life with their family, how do you do it? How do you make time for everything?
It's tough. I did hear Sarah Huckabee Sanders once she got asked that question. She's like, "There's always a trade off, right? You feel like
Yeah.
you're failing here, you're failing there." My family is really my priority.
Mhm.
So and actually, this working for Mike Lindell is just the best. It's been
Yeah.
it really has been and it came at the right time too in my life because I was wanting to get to be more involved with my kids. Being on the White House beat, that is tough. I mean, there's some days you're
Yeah.
there 14, 15 hours a day, and I just knew that wasn't going to be sustainable anyway. In all honesty,
Mhm.
I was going
Mhm.
to have to make
Mhm.
a change because it is so important to me to be able to drop my kids off at school.
Mhm.
I have a little bit of help with that now on certain days of the
Right.
week of picking them up a couple days a week. I have a babysitter, it helps out some with that, so that I can take the now that I'm running the network and I can take some of these calls. But for the most part, I'm picking them up. I
Mhm.
get to take my phone calls, but I'm with them, and we talk about the fact that mommy does have to take phone calls, but she's going to be right off, and we're going to do this. I get to be at every dance practice. I go to my son's basketball practices. I get
Right.
to be involved with everything. I get to volunteer at school some, maybe not as much as the other moms, but I make sure to incorporate that. And it can get tiring. I don't maybe have a lot of time at this stage in my life for personal
Mhm.
social or, friends, but I have some great mom friends where we do some things together. And
Right.
they're also very strong believers. We encourage one
Mhm.
another, totally not involved in politics, these women, but it is hectic. But I also remember I cherish the moments because I'm a little bit of an older mom and I got to see my friends do it and I know how fast it goes.
Mhm.
So my career is secondary. God and family are first.
Mhm. Mhm. I wanna talk a little bit about your career though, because, you're very good at what you do, and proof of that is one one post that you had October 23rd, folks. on your Substack, you said that you said prepare for war against Venezuela. So you were ahead of the curve on this. How did you know that this was coming, Emerald?
I have sources.
Ah.
I talk to people in the White House. I talk to people in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. I talk to the people they're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
That's briefing them. I talk to the briefers. I did manage to, I mean, during my time covering being embedded in DC, um, instead of, taking long lunch breaks, I really, really built my source list of
Mm-hmm.
people,
Mm-hmm.
because I knew and also I wasn't one of those people that could hang around a lot after work because I had kids. So I really hit the pavement really hard when I was in DC, and that is still paying out off. That
Mm-hmm.
investment in meeting people and talking
Yeah.
to people.
Maybe part of God's plan for where he was taking you.
It was. It
Yeah.
was. And again, sometimes I would just make these random meetings, and I know that was God putting these people in my path, and then they show up, these years later. And Patrick Byrne and I, who, he is obviously one of my sources on this, and
Mm-hmm.
he comes on the show and openly says that. He's actually at the White House with meetings today. We were joking about how he didn't even remember like meeting me back in 2020, around the election time. I'm like, no, we actually touched base, well before you reached out on this other stuff, years later. And so it just how it comes back around even.
Mm-hmm.
But what it and that's the thing. In journalism, real journalists have sources. What
Right.
is interesting that a lot of people wouldn't know is that a lot of these journalists, even in the corporate media, they don't even really have any real sources. They read somebody else's work and then said, "Oh, according
Mm-hmm.
to so many sources." But that is,
Or they just
and
make stuff
it
up
was
like
funny.
Tucker Carlson does.
You know who questioned it? There's a guy named Rick Grinnell. He's one
Mm.
of the president's special envoys. Grinnell. He was questioning my sources during
Mm.
that time, and I said,
Um,
"You know who I'm talking." I told him publicly. I said, "You know, I have sources," and he was trying to
mhm.
discredit because he was working to kind of keep Maduro in place.
Mhm.
But now, obviously, I've been proven right, for good
So
or bad.
this
I was proven right.
this story though, I want to ask you about this. This is I want to get your insight in this. Of course, the political left is going nuts about what Trump did. But do you see the Venezuela story, what the Trump administration did, as about regime change, or is this a deeper part of the Monroe Doctrine? Because now everybody's talking
Mhm.
about Greenland seriously, and maybe even Canada. What do you think? Do you think this was just simply about regime change and economics, or is there a bigger plan going on here?
I obviously know for a fact it's not just about oil or regime change. Sure, oil factors into it. Sure,
Right.
you had a regime that was subversive to the United States.
Hmm.
We had a real counterintelligence problem. We still do. Okay, we have a counterintelligence problem based on the operation out of Venezuela against the United States. And
Hmm.
that is in our hemisphere, going back
Yeah.
to the Monroe Doctrine. And you have these bad actors from the Eastern Hemisphere who have
Hmm.
party, right,
Yeah.
in Venezuela. You got China there, you got Iran there,
Cuba. Yeah.
Cuba, and and
Hmm.
and so much of this goes back to Cuba. And
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. And I would ask my sources on this. I say, "You seriously, little Cuba has caused us this much problem, these many
Hmm.
problems to this day?" And they have bought off, they and Venezuela have worked together to buy off so many of our diplomats and
Mm.
our intelligence officials. And
Really.
that's the part of this that has not dropped yet, right? There
Hmm.
needs to be
Hmm.
a roundup. So, with what Trump is doing militarily, right? The operation he did in capturing Maduro, and he says, we're going to
Right.
run the country, that's well and good. And I'm usually allergic to this kind of operation. But
Right.
knowing what I know, I think it's the right move, but with a caveat. You have to
Hmm.
do the domestic part. You have to round up the traitors. We have American traitors, Leighton,
Yeah. Yeah.
bad ones,
Hmm.
high-level ones. You have to
Mm.
round those guys up, and you have to make an example of them. You have to
Yeah.
let people know what they did.
Yeah.
Not only that, Venezuela helped Russia to tap into our submarine cables, so our defense communications have been compromised, breached for a decade, according
That is
to
shocking. Yeah.
it's it's massively shocking.
Mhm.
And that was a former Venezuelan high up military intelligence general named Hugo Carvajal. He worked for Chavez, who was revealing this information. He's setting up there actually where Maduro is now, right? Rikers,
Mhm.
singing like a bird so that he can kind of maybe salvage the rest of his life, even though he's a little bit. And you know who was his cellmate? P. Diddy. It's crazy.
Oh,
This stuff
wow.
just doesn't. I know people don't believe it
Yeah,
half the
it
time
writes
because
itself. Mhm.
it does, but that's
Well,
actually confirmed.
yeah, but one of the things that, is to me is really noteworthy is the surgical precision with which Maduro was removed in comparison to all
Yeah.
the bloodshed and trouble that took to get rid of Saddam Hussein. And
Oh my goodness.
that's almost a statement about the Trump presidency, how efficient and effective things have been. But that's not the biggest story right now going on in the US, is it? There's your good friend, Mr. Lindell, is running for governor
Yeah,
in
he is.
Minnesota, and the incumbent is in a lot of trouble. I was reading about Carolyn Levitt dropping 8 major updates as the walls close in, pardon the pun, on Tim Walz and the Minnesota fraudsters. This is a huge story. Were you shocked by this? And that's part
No.
one of my question. And secondly, how do you think this is going to impact Mr. Lindell's campaign?
Well, I think it was a huge boost for Mike. He is the clear front runner on the Republican side, right?
Hmm.
With all the other people who have thrown
Which
their
is
hat
why
in
he's
the
getting
ring.
attacked so much. Yeah.
Yeah, he easily wins
Yeah.
the Republican nomination. Now, it was a little less clear when you got to the general, um, as to how well he would do, but it's also hard, from what I understand, to kinda get the 65 and older crowd onto the phone if you're talking about polling.
Yeah.
So, polling's really tough these days. It's an
Mhm.
art that's, you know there's the fake pollster, but even when you're a real pollster, there's a lot of challenges to polling these days.
Right.
So, it wasn't real clear in the general, so this was a huge boost for him. The
Mhm.
problem is now the Democrats have been handed a gift, right? We'll see, because this is still a developing situation with the
Mhm.
ICE shooting,
Mhm.
the incident that
Yeah.
happened. The
Yeah.
Democrats have already seized on that. Tim Walz, especially, who was in really hot water. He'd already,
Yeah.
withdrew from the race.
Mhm.
He's supposed to testify in Congress today or tomorrow on
Do you think he'll
himself.
have to resign? Do you think it'll come to that?
It would have
Mm.
prior to this now
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of. They're gonna go so hard with this.
Mhm.
And we're learning a little bit about this woman. Is the angle of the camera is hard to see, so they're gonna milk this for everything it's worth.
Yeah.
So we'll see how the Trump administration responds to this, because that'll have also a direct effect on Mike, right? Because his
Yeah.
wagon is no doubt hitched to President Trump. But there's so many more problems. I don't know how much it'll be interesting to see how this does play in Minnesota, because Minnesotans are just hurting.
Mhm.
Economically, they're really hurting. The
All the way
crime
back to
and
COVID, really, right? I mean,
Oh,
you know.
yeah, and really even before, because they have had
Mhm.
such corrupt state government.
Mhm.
Look at
Mhm.
I mean, just look at this. The
Yeah.
taxpayer dollars that were going to these Somalis, it's not shocking, because it's right in line with a lot we'd already learned from Doge, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I bet the extent of it is, I'm actually told it's way more astronomical than even the $9 billion we've already reported, that it just goes so
Oh,
far beyond. And at
yeah.
a time when people can't buy houses,
Mhm.
everyone here in America is still complaining. Things have gotten a little bit better under the first Trump year, but people still feel like they can't afford
Yeah.
the items they need, and that they just have much less income. That's something that Trump is really gonna have to address in
Mhm.
2026. So the kitchen table issues, as we say, right?
Yeah.
Even people who support Trump aren't really feeling better about the economics yet. Our GDP came in much higher than usual. I think Trump has an opportunity here if he explains it well. Like, look, you haven't felt the effect of it yet, but there's this, and this is where we're going to take this to, right? He needs to
Right.
really, again, talk to the American people, because he had excellent actual wage growth in the first term, right?
Mhm.
Americans felt the share of the wealth and the growth of the GDP. So he needs to explain, we're going to get there. This is how we're going to get there. But Minnesotans, particularly, when I talk to them, they're really feeling that way. And then they see how corrupt their government is. They
Mhm,
also
mhm.
understand that they have been invaded.
Yeah,
Okay. They
yeah.
look around and they see, and the crime in Minneapolis is it's just
Mhm.
off the charts. And Mike tells me now, I haven't been there, but Mike tells me there's just empty storefronts everywhere.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, Escape from New York.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I think that Mike stands and people in the state know that he's brought business there, right? He's hired
Yeah.
people in Minnesota. He's been a
Mhm.
successful businessman who also Minnesotans face the drug crisis that the
Yeah.
whole nation faces, right? In
Mhm.
great numbers there. He's such a story of redemption and hope for that. And he
Yeah.
understands it. He doesn't look down on these people. He understands it. He works with them. That's who he hires often at his factory. So I think he has a real opportunity here. But look, Democrats do not want to let go of Minnesota. So you're going to see a lot happen there. You're going to see a lot happen in America over 2026, just in general, color revolutionary type tactics.
Right.
But Minnesota's sort of ground zero for that.
Mhm. And, talking about the Somalis, not to pick on them, but I think we can safely recognize that the Somali culture is a pirate culture. These are that is a big part
Right.
of their culture, of the way they operate. And so we shouldn't be astonished that when they come to the West, whether it's Canada, the United States, or Britain, that they engage you know, in piracy and fraud, like running fake daycare centers where you go there and trying to, I saw these videos. I'm sure you did, Emerald, of people coming up and these investigative reporters saying, I want, I want to put Johnny in this daycare, and there's somebody there who can't speak English, and there are no kids there. But I mean, to be surprised by that, I'm sure that Minnesotans, rank and file Minnesotans, are shocked by this, and they should be. But we really shouldn't be when we invite people who are
Right.
pirates into the country. But talk about Mike Lindell. I want to ask about this because I know you're close to him, and he's such a fascinating personality, such a big personality. He's
Mhm.
been so successful in business, including on the Lindell TV network and My Pillow and everything he's done. What is motivating someone like him to go into politics? It seems kind of an odd choice to sort of paint this bullseye on his back and take all
That's what
these
Mike
slings and
constantly
arrows.
does. The
But is it
man
is
runs
it like
into the
Trump?
fire every single time,
Yeah.
and it's not a farce. It's not a put on.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is really who he is.
That's who he is. Yeah. He
And
is he does seem so genuine. I mean,
that's just him.
um, yeah. But he must feel that he has a lot to offer the people of Minnesota, and that's why he's doing this, right? Wh
He
I'm just curious about, someone who's so successful on that level, why he would go into politics. But I guess
he
it's like Donald Trump, you could ask the same question, right?
Yeah, he really does believe that he probably stands a better chance than anyone else that Republicans could put on the ticket, right? And
Yeah.
just for all the reasons I stated, Minnesotans are really, really hurting. The
Mhm.
state has fallen. It's like we're gonna have to go and reclaim Dearborn, Michigan, right? Minnesota's a state. We're gonna have to
Yeah.
go and reclaim it.
Mhm.
And that's what Mike's doing. He has probably, I would almost say he has, and on the Republican side of politics, second name recognition to Donald Trump. You can't go
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
can't you need to take a bag of snacks if you're gonna go anywhere with Mike Lindell, because you're definitely not gonna make it to lunch or dinner because you just get swamped.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what state you're in. Doesn't matter if
Mm.
it's blue or red. People love that man, and they
Mhm.
recognize him. So he
Mhm.
has that same name recognition that is really key, right, when you're gonna run in a tough contest like that, and
Mhm.
especially in a Democratic stronghold, right? Donald Trump's celebrity was wildly helpful to him in 2016. People knew him from The
Right.
Apprentice. They loved the
Mhm.
guy that said, "You're fired." He struggled with that a
Yeah.
little bit in actual real life, but
Yeah.
anyway, it really helped it, and Mike's that kinda guy, and he has been out there in the media so much abo in non-politically, right? He used to be a darling of CBS and CBS Sunday Morning when they would do these glowing profiles on the former drug addict turned
I
pillow
remember this.
mogul
Yeah.
who offers others a chance at redemption by
Right.
paying for their rehab and giving them jobs.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow.
So he just really believes he really truly believes he can help. And here's
Mm.
also people go read his book. It's a fantastic book about his story. And one of the best stories out of his experiences, even when Mike was still a severe drug addict, and we're talking crack, okay? We're
Mhm.
talking the hard stuff. And the man would literally, stay up for 14 days at a time. Sometimes he would not have been to
Right.
sleep. And on one of these particular benders, when he'd been up for 14 days, his dealers got together and shut him down. And they
Wow.
called every dealer in the city and said, "Do not sell to Mike Lindell. If you do, you'll suffer for it." And so they told him that they were doing this. And he went
Mm.
around the city and no one would sell to him. And he come back and he says, "Why are you doing this to me? Like, why on earth will you not sell me drugs?" And they told him that he was going to be their way out. They said that Michael Lindell was not meant to be a drug addict. And for some way, they knew that he was going to end up saving all of them in so many words. But
Wow.
it's worth a read. And I think that's one of the best stories. Even
Mhm.
back then, when he was not in a good place, people recognized this about him, that he was someone who
Mhm.
was capable and that he would bring everybody up with him.
Wow. It's a story of redemption really then.
Mhm.
And he seems to be obviously, he's not on drugs now, but
Mhm.
he seems to have retained this boundless energy, that much like Donald Trump, he just is somebody who seems to have just incredible
Oh
energy.
my
Anytime
gosh.
you see him, it's palpable. It just he just glows
I
with
traveled
this energy
one day
and
with
this joyful
him.
presence.
He picked me up in my town at like 4:30 in the morning on his plane. We hit 3 different cities across the nation, and I get dropped off at like midnight my time, and he was headed off to somewhere else the next morning.
Wow.
I was exhausted. I have never done so much in one day as I did with Mike Lindell, and he seemed
Mm.
fine.
Yeah.
And Trump is so much like that too. Those two, that's
Yeah.
why they get
Yeah.
along so well, and they still talk all the time. In fact,
Mhm.
Mike just spent the week at Mar-a-Lago, after New Year's or during New Year's, but they also just talk on the phone a lot.
Mhm.
And Trump will call Mike and say, "Hey, Mike, thinking about doing this." And he'll run something by Mike, and Mike gives him his opinion, and Mike does the same. They're truly friends, but they are so much alike. They both have such a passion for
Mhm.
doing and for making things better. They're so
Yeah.
invigorated by it. And also, in Mike's case, I'll say I've never seen a Christian maintain their first love and that immense faith
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
Christian, that
Mm.
first love you have when
Mhm.
you first become a believer as Mike.
Mhm.
He has that every single day, and that's also inspiring and contagious.
Mhm. Well, I pray that, the good people of Minnesota elect him. They
Me too.
certainly deserve a leader like him after suffering through so many years of Mr. Walz and others. But I wanted to talk to you lastly, Emerald, before we let you go about, um, a really interesting project that you are promoting on your, Substack. It's called, Christians Must Unite to Save the West
Yeah.
and Christian Nation that you've launched. This is something that is obviously very near and dear to your heart. It's a big part of your life and your vocation, and it seems to imbue all the things that you do in your show and in your writing. Did you want to talk about this a little bit? It seems to me of something that is of really great importance to you, and you've invited people to get involved in it, which I think is very exciting.
I would love to. And you know how we talked about those people coming back around in your life and those connections. It was really funny. The editor, um, my friend has come on to be the editor of that section. His name is John Smirak. He actually works with thestream.org, and you would know his name from he's a wonderful author. He's written several books. But years
Hmm.
ago, the imprint Regnery tried to put John and us together, and I didn't know him. We
Hmm.
never met. tried to put John and I together to write a book during the first Trump term. Now, that never came to
Mhm.
fruition. We actually didn't even meet or talk during that time, but they said, you all would be a great fit. And fast forward years later to a couple of years ago, I had a friend putting together a a little weekend conference in our area in Central Virginia, and John was one of the invited speakers. So we got a chance to talk, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Regnery had suggested we write a book together. He's like, yeah, I remember that. They told me about it too, and they said we were really, and and I'm like, and I've read your stuff. You're so funny, because I think we should have humor with everything we do. It keeps us
Right.
sane.
Mhm.
Um, and so we connected then, and then we've just kept in touch, we talk from time to time. And so when, last year I realized, if the West is going to be saved, it's going to be the Christians who do it, right? We've done it
Right.
before.
Mhm.
We're going to have to do it again. And
Yeah.
I feel that there's more people there's a desire for boldness in
Mhm.
Christianity. For so
Mhm.
many years, this milk toast, weak soy boy form of Christianity has permeated particularly the evangelical church.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think people are tired of that, and they're ready
Yeah.
because we've lost so much ground, and they're ready to get bold and look at the geopolitical landscape through a Christian lens and the cultural
Mhm.
landscape through the Christian lens. And so that's what this is about. There's lots of guest writers. John is curating that. He sends them to me. We look at them, we collaborate, and we're like, yeah, this is really great. And so it's a section on my Substack when you subscribe, and I'm just really proud of it. And I really love the different writers that have come on board to contribute to that. And I think I've also been longing for a collaboration, so it's a great opportunity to do that too.
Well, I commend you for doing it. It's very exciting. I've read some of the pieces, and actually, some of my own writing is very much in this line. I've been writing about along similar lines, and so I was very excited to see that, and I commend you for doing it. Um,
But we would love to
one thing
share
I'm
yours on Christian
Yeah,
Nation.
no, I'd be happy to do it
Sure,
if you would do that. I have a personal favor to ask of you before
sure.
we dive into our reading list, and that is we cannot get Mike Lindell's wonderful My Pillow products in communist Canada. Would you mind putting a bug in his ear about that?
Yeah,
Because I would
absolutely.
love to order some of his great products, but we can't get them here.
Now, remember when there
Uh,
was the convoy? There was he wanted to give pillows to the convoy, and they had
that's
some
right.
issue with
That's
that too. I'll
right.
ask Mike about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it probably has something to do with with his faith and his politics because, of
probably.
course, yeah, our government's trying to drive, all vestiges of Christianity, from the public square, but they're not succeeding. I believe that God has a plan for us. So talking about the reading list, when I researched the Emerald, I was a little bit shocked to find that you haven't quite gotten around to writing a book yet. You've probably written enough that you could
You and my
compile
publisher both. I
books.
do have a publisher, and he actually lives in my town. So he will stop
Yeah.
by my house at least once a week. "When you gonna start the book? When you starting on the book?" Like, he literally, so I
Well,
know.
we have that to look forward to. But so what I thought I would do is I noticed that you had recommended a couple of books over Christmas. So I thought I would add these to our reading list. One of them is called Dark Crusade, and the other one is called Reshore. Do
Mhm.
you want to talk about these two books and why you recommended them to your viewers and listeners and subscribers?
Excellent reads and very timely. Now, Dark Crusade is a new edition of a book that was written a while ago by a guy named Cliff Kirikoff. Cliff has a really stellar background. He actually worked as the senior staffer on the Foreign Relations Committee under former Senator, the late Jesse Helms.
Hmm.
He's been a professor. He's just a very, you know, when you talk about a scholar, he's the epitome of a scholar, but he's not one of those that fallen into indoctrination. He's just
Oh yeah. Okay.
I love listening to him, and he has given a talk
Hmm.
here with what we organize as well. And his book, the publisher asked him to redo it because they could see that there was the growing conversation around Zionism,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And a lot of people don't really understand the history of it. I know
Hmm.
I didn't for a long time. And what
Hmm.
Cliff has done is he has laid out the political. This is not the church story of it, or
Right.
the spiritual or the religious history of it. This is just the political movement, and he goes all
Hmm.
the way back to Britain, and it's just such a wonderful work of history, of
Mhm.
documenting true history, and it's just an excellent read altogether, and I am very tactile, and so I love the feel of the book too. It's a beautiful cover. But I
Mm.
feel like as people are engaging in these conversations, especially on a topic that is so charged, right? I mean, you
Mhm.
have families walk out on each other
Right.
over this
Mhm.
topic. Um, it's important to know your facts, and I think that if you wanna understand the history of Zionism and really be prepared to engage in conversation about it, Crusade is an excellent resource.
Mhm. And the other book that you mentioned was called Reshore: How Tariffs Will Bring Our Jobs Home and Revive the American Dream. Another very controversial topic because it ties into the Trump administration's current economic policy, which is promising to bear fruit, is bearing fruit already, but is still receiving a lot of criticism. Do you want to talk about this book a little bit?
It is, it's really good, and it makes the case, again, it's not just about the tariffs, right? It's
Right.
the
Mhm.
tariffs and bringing back manufacturing.
Making things again. Yeah. Yeah.
Making things here again,
Mhm. Mhm.
restoring what was gutted and what really did make America great, right? Remember, used to you could have, you know, you worked in a manufacturing. I had another friend and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. His family had, like a manufacturing plant here in the United States. They had a respectable, he's like, my grandfather had he
Yeah.
was well to do but not greedy, right? Well-to-do.
Yeah.
He had a country club membership, but his foreman was able to let his wife stay home. He had a beautiful home
Yeah.
himself, and his family was well cared for, and they were able
Mhm.
to save, and they were going to have a pension.
Mhm.
And these trade deals gutted that. That
Yeah.
destroyed that way of life. And so this
Yeah.
book makes the case for bringing that back. And his name is Spencer Morrison, the author. Great guy, a Canadian as well. So there
What
is
do
your
you know?
Canada connection.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier Dearborn, Michigan, which was one of the great car manufacturing, auto industry manufacturing sites in the country. And just look what happened there
Oh gosh, yeah.
because of the loss of all that, loss of all those jobs. And beneath that, when you lose those jobs, you also lose all that community. You lose churches, you lose
Yeah.
schools, you lose all of that, and that's a huge part of what America is, isn't it? I mean, so
Yeah.
that sounds like a wonderful book. Well, Emerald, we want to thank you so much for taking this time with us. We're going to provide the links to your show and to your Substack. Is there
Thank you.
anything else we haven't mentioned where that you're working on or where people can find you that we haven't talked about and that is important that you'd want to mention before we close off?
Well, I would just ask that you all download the Lindell TV app and,
Okay.
check in with us. We do really amazing on the ground reporting from DC. Clearly, we've been well ahead of the curve
Mhm.
on not just
Venezuela for
Venezuela.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, that probably most notably and
Yeah.
recently, right? But
Yeah.
we a lot of us are very well connected. You got Mike
Yeah.
Lindell, you got Mayor Rudy Giuliani, you got myself, you got correspondents who are really well-trained journalists. And we've really got the connections that, you get insight and information you just honestly don't get anywhere else. And so I would
Mhm.
ask that they download the Lindell TV app, tune in to us as you can over there, and I'm really thankful to spend time with you. This was really fun.
Yeah, well, it was my pleasure. I hope God continues to bless you and your family
Thank you.
and all the work that you're doing. And I want to thank you so much for taking this time with us and allowing us to introduce you to our viewers and listeners. And I pray that you continue all of your wonderful work. Thanks so much for being our guest here today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.